onward we go to the Phantom of the Opera stage production. Now, just a quick little disclaimer before we get too far ahead of ourselves here. I have the 25th year celebration of it. So, apart from the obvious cast differences, I'm not really sure if there's anything bigger in terms of the overall performance that I should be aware of. But yeah, I think that this is probably the first time that I've ever really sat down and watched this thing in its entirety. Narratively, it is virtually identical to the film, obviously, so I don't have much to say in that department. What I will, however, is that as somebody who is quite familiar with the scenes of the film and sort of, the way that the bigger set pieces are supposed to look, I did really enjoy how they managed to bring it all to life on stage. And the way that it forced your mind's eye or your imagination to fill in those gaps and really help you visualize the parts of everything that aren't actually there. Not only that, but I couldn't help but get the sense that it would be quite an immersive experience being in that audience. For one thing, you have the giant chandelier hanging above your head depending on where you're seated in the theater. You have the amazing orchestra playing live right in front of you. You have the cast kind of addressing the audience at different points. Whenever there's an actual opera that's supposed to be happening in the story, they kind of behaved as though you were not there to see Phantom of the Opera anymore. You were in the Opera Populaire, in the audience, watching whatever opera that this cast was performing at the time. And I just thought that was a cool little extra layer of immersion and inclusion for the audience. In terms of the music, something that I noticed that was also quite interesting was the songs seemed longer. There were a couple verses thrown into them that I didn't recognize, which, if you think about it, only makes sense because we're not dealing with scenes, transitions, having to condense everything to the suitable runtime of the film. So why not have the musical have an emphasis on music? So I thought that was really cool. In terms of the cast, I did have some issues. Nothing major, nothing that really ruined my experience or anything like that. And maybe it's unfair for me to compare this cast to the cast of the film, but I'm gonna anyway. Carlotta really felt like Carlotta in spirit here. My only real complaint is that it just felt like Minnie Driver gave her such a sass, just a extra sharpness to the diva-ness and the sassiness of the character that's just not really there. She definitely tries and she succeeds to an extent, but I'm just missing that extra bit of edge to her character. Madame Giry was another issue that I had. Now, when I think of Madame Giry, the first thing that comes to mind is, to one extent, there's this level of deviousness to her, as this right hand of the Phantom, as the person that has this relationship with him, that knows kind of what is actually going on behind the scenes before anybody else really does. There's also this sense of professionalism, expectation, um, a level of intimidation when it comes to everybody that she is responsible for on stage, such as the ballerina's chorus line, you know, things of those nature. Um, she definitely has a commanding presence to her, very authoritative whenever she's involved in something that I just couldn't really find in this performance. I didn't pick up on that, which I felt was kind of a shame. The Phantom and Christine, I think, were fine in terms of acting. But for me, they just weren't very enjoyable to watch. And I think the bulk of the issue that I had with them came down to the way they sang. Now, I'm not a music professional, not gonna even try to be. Um, and I think that there are quite a few factors that go into something like this. Um, does it come down to my personal taste and what is pleasing to my ear? Is it, their talents and kind of the approach that they take to the personas of the characters as individuals? Is it the difference between being classically trained for something like this versus the bit of vocal training that you probably get for a Hollywood production? I don't know. I think that the simplest way that I can explain it is that it felt like there were different times here where their voices felt almost too big for them, or too big for the scene or the situation. Um, when they were just being the characters, when they were just singing normally, they sounded really, really good. A lot of it was very beautiful and very entrancing, right? But when they would put that extra bit of oomph behind notes and really go for that grandiose vocal thing, that's really where it started to lose me. And I really struggled with that part of their performance. Overall, I did enjoy it quite a lot. It was a lot of fun to kind of witness the spectacle that Phantom of the Opera is on stage, or was, I guess, at this point in time, unfortunately. Um, so, I think it's not so much of, was it a bad time? Is it a bad film? No. I think it comes down to, how does this version stack up to one of my favorite movies of all time? Maybe the bar's set a little bit too high. I don't know. But, I don't want to be too negative or too leave it in a bad note, because I did really, really enjoy it. But with this review in the bag, that leaves us with one last little bit of something to cover before the final curtain falls for us. So until then, ladies and gentlemen, as always, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you later.